The most important crops to the Sumerians were wheat and barley. Farmers also grew dates, grapes, figs, melons, and apples. By 3000 BCE, they had invented the plow and the plow seeder. Sumerians even wrote handbooks that told how and when to plant crops. They also had a calendar based on the moon to aid farmers. The farmers were very inventive. They made bronze hand tools like hammers, sickles, axes, and hoes. Being located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, they also fished for food.
Babylon was an ancient civilization located in Mesopotamia from 2000 BC to 1750 BC. It is most known for Hammurabi's Code, a written collection of legal decisions that were recorded and written down towards the end of his reign. It is famous today for being one of the earliest and most complete legal writings.
Chariots were considered the most elite unit in the Hittite army. In times of war, it served as the ancient tanks that advanced toward the enemy line. During siege, they supported infantry during assaults in city walls. Other than military and security purposes, the chariots were also used by Hittite nobles and other wealthy individuals. It was used for transportation and even just for entertaining. The Battle of Kadesh was a showdown between Hittite king Mutuales II and Egyptian king Ramses II. The Hittites had an estimated 2,000 chariots during the battle. The Hittite chariots had a heavy box serving as a cab with an axle passing beneath it, which held two six-spoke wheels. The six-spoke wheel was an innovation made by the Hittites. The cab was made from wood bended into shape by using steam. In order to protect it from fire arrows, it was covered by leather from ox hides. The chariot allowed the Hittites to rival other great civilizations like Babylon, Assyria, and Egypt. The Treaty of Kadesh is the world's earliest peace treaty that is still extant. It was signed by Egyptian Pharaoh Ramses the Great and Hittite King Hattusili in approximately 1259 BC, making it over 3,000 years old. The Hittites engaged in a lucrative trade with neighboring lands, particularly with the wealthy urban societies of Mesopotamia. Asia Minor was rich in metals, and they traded copper, silver, and iron in exchange for luxury textiles and jewelry from Mesopotamia.
Hey you! Me? Yeah, you! You want some wheat? Yeah, I have iron! Let's trade! Yeah!
Nineveh was the capital of an ancient Assyrian city of Upper Mesopotamia, located on the outskirts of Mosul in modern-day northern Iraq on the eastern bank of the Tigris River. Nineveh was also an important junction for commercial routes crossing the Tigris on the Great Highway between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean, thus uniting the East and the West. It received wealth from many sources so that it became one of the greatest ancient cities.
Ashurbanipal, king of Assyria from 668 to about 630 BC, was in possession of a library in which archaeologists discovered more than 30,000 cuneiform tablets and fragments. It is the largest surviving royal library in the world. The library was located in Nineveh, the capital at the time. In addition to being known for his library, Ashurbanipal was known for being extremely cruel to those who defied him. A quote from him reads, "I built a pillar at the city gate, and I flayed all the chief men who had revolted, and I covered the pillar with their skins." These punishments were common and had the desired effect of serving as a warning to the people. However, the
Chaldeans were in control of Mesopotamia from 612 to 550 BC. In 612 BC, the Chaldeans formed a combined army with Medes and other neighboring groups. They burned and destroyed Nineveh, an Assyrian city. Many people in the area were happy and relieved that the city was finally destroyed. After defeating the Assyrians, the Chaldeans made Babylon their capital. In 6000 BC, Babylon became the center of a new empire. The Chaldean king, named Nebuchadnezzar, completely restored the city of Babylon. It became most famous for the Hanging Gardens. It was considered one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, according to the Greek scholars at the time. One of the Nebuchadnezzar's wives missed the plants from her mountain home, so he planted trees and shrubs on terraces 75 feet high. He also constructed a great city wall, which was used heavily for astronomy. Early astronomers kept records of how the planets they observed were all part of the same solar system. They observed the planets at night from the top of a seven-tiered ziggurat, which was 300 feet high. However, the control of Babylon and the empire's power fell after Nebuchadnezzar's death.
In 550 BC, the Persian king Cyrus united the Medes and the Persians and founded Persia. He soon began conquering neighboring kingdoms and would eventually control an empire that spanned over 2,000 miles. Persia had the Caspian Sea to the north, the Persian Gulf to the south, and mountains which could naturally deter potential enemies from attacking. Additionally, they had basins where water collected naturally, which led to better land for agriculture. Cyrus showed kindness towards the people he conquered and stopped his soldiers from looting and burning. He would also honor local customs and religions. Persia always had a strong military to back up their policies. From the ages of 5 to 20, every Persian man was trained in archery and horse riding. After that, 4 years of military service were mandated. They could then be called on to serve in the army. They fought mainly with bows and swords and called their best soldiers the Immortals. Cyrus would eventually die fighting invaders, and his son Cambyses took the throne. He would conquer Egypt, and unlike his father, he did not honor their culture. After 8 years in rule, he died. Shortly after, rebellions broke out all over the empire. Darius took over and spent his first few years in rule putting down revolts. He would soon turn his efforts to conquering, however, and the Persian Empire would grow larger than before, spanning about 2,500 miles.
Alexander was very knowledgeable about war strategy and skilled in battle. He led his army against a larger Persian army led by Darius, and defeated them after many years. While he was in pursuit of Persia, who retreated further and further back into their own territory as Alexander conquered it, he also conquered Egypt and became pharaoh. Soon after conquering Egypt, he conquered Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, all of which yielded a huge treasure, which Alexander distributed among his army. Alexander continued east following Darius. He found Darius dead, but he still continued east all the way to Central Asia. They had been fighting for 11 years and had marched more than 11,000 miles. His army, whose morale was low, all wanted to return to their homes. Disappointed, Alexander led his army back to He was able to maintain the loyalty of his army because of how he shared the treasure they took from civilizations instead of taking it all for himself. His great empire fell when he died a sudden death, and his generals fought among themselves for the power, eventually splitting the territory among 3 generals. The Umayyad Empire began in 660 AD. They were the first Muslim dynasty. They had a very powerful military which allowed them to expand their territory. During the Umayyad Empire, the Sunni and Shia split. The majority of Muslims were Sunni, however, a small minority of them were Shia, who disagreed with the Sunni on who their leader is. Because of the disagreement, the 2 groups split and the Shia were forced out of the Umayyad Empire. The Umayyads also moved their capital to Damascus, which is currently the capital of Syria. Damascus was more central in their territory than their previous capital, Mecca. This made it easier to communicate and control their lands. The Abbasids came to power over the Muslim Caliphate in 750 AD. Along with other groups, the Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads. They were the most powerful of the groups, so they took the power. They killed the rest of the Umayyad family. They had control over international territories, which gave them access to valuable trade routes. They developed a strong bureaucracy, which led to a very good control over their vast territory, and they had a powerful and loyal military. Because of this, the rulers could afford to build luxurious cities. They also supported the scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers that those cities attracted. The scholars preserved existing knowledge and produced an enormous body of original learning. The Abbasids also created a currency called the dinar. Because the Abbasids controlled so much land and trade routes, dinar could be used in all these places, making trade very easy. Before the dinar was made, many different currencies were used, making trade very difficult. With the dinar, however, trade was easier, so more people traded and ideas were spread faster, leading to advances in society.
Malik Shah was the great ruler of the Seljuks. The Seljuk people used their large army to conquer neighboring peoples, like many civilizations at the time. As a result, their empire was large. Unlike other civilizations, however, The Seljuks had great peace and religious tolerance under Malik Shah's rule. Malik Shah also built the Masjid-i-Jam, a great mosque.
Around 12,000 BC, a Mongol clan leader named Temujin sought out unifying the Mongols under his leadership. By 1206, he had conquered all of Mongolia and took the name Genghis Khan, which translates to universal ruler. Throughout the following 21 years, the empire conquered most of Asia. By 1225, Central Asia was under Mongol control. They had complete control over the Eurasian steppe. This included the Western steppe, which runs from Central Asia to Eastern Europe, and the Eastern steppe, which runs throughout present-day Mongolia. These regions have very little rainfall and are filled with dry, windy plains that support grasses. The Mongols are considered to be the greatest horsemen in history. They invented the stirrup, which allows horsemen to maneuver themselves while riding to shoot arrows. Genghis Khan was a great military leader, however a very ruthless one. He was a good strategist that used terror tactics to intimidate his opponents and people he had conquered. He commonly would kill all but small children and sometimes women after conquering tribes. However, as new leaders were brought into power, the reign weakened, and by the late 1400s, the empire collapsed. They couldn't keep control over all the territories, and some groups revolted. By 1300, the Byzantine Empire was in a decline, and the Mongols had destroyed the Turkish Seljuk kingdom of Rum. This left many non-unified groups of Turks, all loyal to their own people. Because of this, there was no central power. Osman, the founder of the empire, created a Muslim state in Anatolia around 1300-1326. Successors bought surrounding land, forming alliances, and conquered nearby groups. In 1361, the Ottomans captured Adrianople. This was the second most important Byzantine city and marked the rise of the Ottoman Empire. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the empire reached the height of its power. It controlled Southeast Europe, parts of Central Europe, parts of Eastern Europe, Western Asia, and Northern Africa. These regions contained 32 provinces and states altogether. The Ottoman Empire's military success was due mainly to the use of gunpowder. It replaced archers on horseback with musket-wielding foot soldiers. They were also early users of cannons. Even walled cities could not defend against them, making conquering very easy. The Ottomans mainly followed the Sunni branch of Islam, which the majority of Islamic people at the time followed also. The Ottoman Empire went through many ages and periods throughout time, including the Age of Expansion starting in 1481, the Age of Ottoman Institutions, periods of military organization and industrialization, and the Age of Decline. Throughout this time, many different sultans came into power, which were leaders elected from the Ottoman dynasty. After fighting with the Central Powers in World War I and losing, many Ottoman regions were split up between the French, British, Russian, and Greeks. The Safavids were in control from 1501 to 1722. Safavids were originally part of an Islamic religious brotherhood named after their founder, Safi al-Din. However, in the 15th century, they aligned themselves with the Shia branch of Islam. There are far less people that followed the Shia branch, making the Safavids part of the minority. In 1499, a 12-year-old named Ishmael started to take control over Persia, which is present-day Iran, and after 2 years, the Safavids had gained complete control over it. After becoming king, he became a religious tyrant, forcing people into following the Shia branch. Anyone that did not convert over was killed. Ishmael conquered Baghdad, which had previously been controlled by the Ottomans. 40,000 people were killed, all Sunnis that had previously been Ottomans. However, in a later battle, the Ottomans used artillery to push back the Safavids, forming a border between the empires, which is now present-day Iran and Iraq border. This is an early example of the Sunni and Shia conflict. Between the growing European civilization to the west and the Indian and Asian civilizations to the east and north, the Safavids were able to set up multiple trade routes. The Silk Road ran through Persia to India in the 16th century, and they also traded with Europe and gave them carpets, silk, and textiles. The leader Shah Abbas brought hundreds of Chinese artisans to the capital, Esfahan. Collaboration between Persians and Chinese artists brought about advancements in metalwork, calligraphy, glasswork, tilework, and pottery. They were well known for their Persian carpets and rugs, and were relished throughout Eurasia for their craftsmanship and intricate designs.